Today we'll be going over what I did with the transmission setup on this F-100 project. The Mustang tail shaft on the world-class T5 puts the shifter clear back here, which is common in a car setup. Since this is going in a pickup, it puts the shifter, darn near at the front of the bench seat or farther back. So a guy could, I know people have used them that way and then they bend their shifter or have bucket seats and it doesn't matter, but I looked for a long time because I've been collecting parts for this project for a long time for an early 80s S10 transmission that has the shifter towards the front and also has a mechanical speedometer cable. So that's a problem if you want to use the stock instrument cluster in this 56. It has to be cable driven. And most of the T5, later model T5s is electronics. So they do sell some kind of adapter thing that allows you to run a mechanical speedometer off of a digital or electronics sensor, but I didn't want to mess with that. So I eventually found a S10 transmission, which is what this is. This piece, I've already swapped this out. I'm just kind of going back over things. So when you do that, you need there's a shift rod in here. So this one, of course, is a longer piece. So you basically need the whole back end of the S10 with that shaft and shifter and all that. The shifter looked all different, so I went with that one. The mounts are a little bit different. The Mustang mount is different than the S10, but that's not going to matter with what we're doing here. But it's mostly a bolt-on swap, except for the speedometer, the drive gear on the transmission shaft is in a different place on the S10. So you got the Mustang ones here. The S10 one is farther back on the main shaft. Unfortunately, there's a fellow on eBay that machines an adapter that allow you to put the gear where you need it on that shaft. The shaft, I should have took this apart, but it's thicker right here where the gear is. So if you move it, it's milled down and it won't fit there. So there's a little clamp setup that goes on there, and I'll throw a picture up of it here, what it looks like. Anyway, it's not cheap, but machine time's not cheap, and I was just happy to find somebody that made such a thing. So that allows me to run the mechanical speedometer off the Mustang tail shaft. But the gears, they look like this. That's a piece that would go on this is one out of the Mustang, I think. It could be the S10. Anyway, so you've got this little collar clamp that goes on there with another piece that holds the gear on like that. And don't do what I did and put it on backwards. I put it on. So when I first put this together, I put it in like that. And because the way the tail shaft tapers, it actually had a clearance issue. And I ended up grinding this to make it fit. And then I emailed the guy. He's like, no, you put it on backwards. So I was like, oh, duh. So I got another collar and put it on that way. That way it fits inside there without rubbing the inside of the tail shaft. I don't know what a guy would do if you couldn't get that. That was a real lifesaver that somebody put some time into building that piece. When I had this out, I went ahead and did replace the bushing in the end of this tail shaft, which there's lots of T5 transmission videos. A lot of guys say take that to the machine shop to do. I didn't have any problem doing it, but I've got a press, and then I use the trick of heating hot and cold, where I put the bushing in after I've got the old one out. I put the new bushing in the freezer for a while, and I take a halogen light or something and put it against this housing, and the thing almost just fell in there. I did have to push it in a little bit with the press, but it went nice and easy. The bushing did have a slice in it to allow for a little, a little room. So maybe the solid bushings are tougher to put in than the split collar ones. I don't know. I didn't have any problem doing that though, so it's nice and tight. And then I end up going with the S10 style seal because it's flush. The Mustang style's got a little extra baffle I don't know what you call it. It's not really a baffle, but I guess I don't have it here. But almost like a big dust seal that sticks out. So that either bushings will fit. But I went with this cleaner looking, simpler one, which is the S10 bushing. So I've got the transmission in, just the motor's just sitting in here. I have built the mounts and stuff. Yeah, I've just got it kind of mocked in there. So this kind of gives you, let you see where that S10 shifter puts it, which is right where you want it in a pickup truck, kind of in the center and the floor. So you can see down here, that's where the speedometer drive is off of this tail shaft. And then you can see how short the shift rail is, so that you got to have the little rail, that a little dark in here, sorry about that, that little rail that goes through, that goes to your shift forks and stuff. That messing with that was a little tricky, getting that collar, that shift collar thing that rides on that shaft, getting that whole tail housing put on and off. I did it a couple times and it wasn't too bad, but once you take them apart, you'll see what I'm talking about. Or there's other transmission videos that are a lot better at explaining the stuff that I am. I'm not I've rebuilt manual transmissions before. They're not that bad as long as you take your time and pay attention to everything you're doing. I didn't rebuild the one in the Mustang. It shift fine. I looked inside it and all the gears look really nice. One of the shift fork tabs were broke off, so I think I stole one off of this transmission, off the S10. Some of these parts are interchangeable, but this is a non-world class, where the Mustang's a world class, so a little better, beefier transmissions. But even the world class has some pretty major limitations to horsepower. I think 300 horse or something like that. They're not super beefy transmission, but it'll be fine for this project. I'm not going to beat on it. It's not a drag car, so don't need to go to a TKO or a whatever yet, anyway, until it explodes. So I think that covers it. I haven't figured out what I'm going to do for the shifter yet. Probably just use the S10 stick, unless it's sloppy or something, then I'll see about upgrading that. But there's like a little ball bearing in here that actually does all the shifting, is on this little ball bearing. It's kind of on a spring. It's kind of pretty clever how they did that. I was not expecting to find that in there. Don't know what I guess I was expecting, but I thought that was pretty neat that they did that. So, but yeah, that's it. The biggest hiccup you're going to have with this is finding an early 80s S10 tail shaft or transmission. The prices of them are kind of crazy on it. You can probably buy a whole S10 for what somebody's going to sell you just the tail shaft for. I lucked out on Craigslist a year or two ago and found a guy. It's been longer than that. Anyway, found some guy on Craigslist just parting out an S10 pickups, two-wheel drive, so I jumped on it and bought the whole thing for around $100, $150. So, and I've got a CJ7 with a non-world class T5. That's what they came with in the early 80s, four-wheel drive, of course. But so I think even this S10, I can probably use parts for that if I ever grenade that thing, which probably will happen because they're not very good. But I think that's it.